Imagine standing on the frozen tundra, the bitter wind of the Ice Age whipping across endless plains of snow. In the distance, colossal shapes move slowly through the haze, giant beasts cloaked in thick, shaggy hair, their curved ivory tusks glistening under the pale sun. The woolly mammoth. Once, they ruled the north, as familiar to prehistoric humans as the bison or the deer. They were symbols of survival, power, and mystery. But today, they are gone, extinct. The question is, why? Did humans hunt them into oblivion, spearing them until the last herds fell beneath fire and flint? Or did the shifting climate, the sudden end of the Ice Age, seal their fate, melting their icy kingdom and leaving them stranded in a world they could no longer call home? Or perhaps, was it something far stranger, something we have yet to fully uncover in the silent records of prehistory? The extinction of the woolly mammoth is not just the story of a vanished animal. It is a mirror reflecting the relationship between humans, nature, and survival itself. Archaeology reveals that our ancestors carved mammoth bones into dwellings, painted their forms on cave walls, and sang songs of the great beasts they both feared and depended on. The Neanderthals, the early Homo sapiens, the tribes wandering across Ice Age Europe, all lived in the shadow of the mammoth. To understand why these giants disappeared is to unlock part of the mystery of human evolution, of how our species adapted, conquered, and endured while others vanished. So join me as we journey back into the Ice Age to uncover the truth behind the great question: why did the woolly mammoth really go extinct?
To begin unraveling the mystery of the woolly mammoth's extinction, we must first step back into their world, the late Pleistocene, a time defined by extremes. Roughly 20,000 years ago, Earth was locked in the grip of the last Ice Age. Vast glaciers stretched over North America, Europe, and Asia, and tundra plains covered the north like a frozen sea of grass. In this harsh landscape, the woolly mammoth thrived. Standing up to 13 feet tall at the shoulder and weighing as much as 6 tons, they were perfectly adapted to their environment. Their long, shaggy coats insulated them against the bitter cold. A thick layer of fat stored beneath their skin provided warmth and energy reserves. Their tusks, sometimes curving more than 15 feet in length, were not just weapons, but tools. Mammoths used them to sweep snow aside in search of grass, to spar with rivals, and to shape their environment. Archaeology shows us just how deeply intertwined these creatures were with prehistoric humans. In Siberia and Ukraine, the remains of mammoths were found arranged into circular structures, entire houses built from bones and tusks covered with animal hides to keep out the wind. In places like Mizhorok, Ukraine, these bone dwellings date back over 15,000 years. Mammoths weren't just a source of food, they were the scaffolding of human survival. In caves across Europe, ancient paintings depict the mammoth with reverence. On the walls of Rouffignac Cave in France, hundreds of images show mammoths walking in herds, etched by torchlight into stone more than 13,000 years ago. To early humans, they were not just prey, they were symbols of strength, spiritual guides, and perhaps even deities of the frozen plains. And yet, despite their dominance, something happened. Roughly 10,000 years ago, mammoths vanished from most of their range. By the time agriculture began to emerge in the Fertile Crescent, the mammoths had already disappeared from mainland Europe and the Americas. Small populations lingered in isolated refuges. On Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean, a group of mammoths survived until just 4,000 years ago. To put that in perspective, while the Egyptians were building the Great Pyramid of Giza, the last mammoths were still roaming a distant island in the frozen north. But why did this happen? Scientists have long debated whether humans, climate change, or a combination of both was responsible. The archaeological evidence paints a complex picture. On one hand, there is proof of extensive hunting. Spear points and butchery marks on mammoth bones suggest that humans targeted these giants for their meat, hides, and tusks. On the other hand, geological studies show that the warming climate at the end of the Ice Age dramatically reduced the grasslands mammoths depended on, replacing them with forests and wetlands. The truth may lie in the intersection of these forces. As the Ice Age ended, mammoths were squeezed between shrinking habitats and expanding human populations. Yet mysteries remain. Why did some mammoths survive thousands of years longer on remote islands? Why do DNA studies suggest that isolated populations suffered from genetic decline, mutations, and disease? Could it be that extinction was not sudden, but a long, drawn-out collapse, a slow fading of giants from the tapestry of life? In exploring the extinction of the woolly mammoth, we uncover not just the story of an animal, but a window into the past, a time when humans were not yet rulers of the earth, but survivors, carving out an existence in the shadow of creatures far larger and more powerful than ourselves. The fate of the mammoth reflects the precarious balance of life during prehistory, a time when climate, by human action or by forces we are only beginning to understand, could be tipped. As we continue, we'll dive deeper into the possible causes of extinction. Was it the spear, the warming climate, or something more mysterious? And what do the bones buried in frozen ground truly tell us about this ancient tragedy?
Picture a scene 15,000 years ago. A band of prehistoric humans, cloaked in furs, advances across a snow-covered plain. In the distance, a herd of mammoths moves slowly, their massive bodies leaving trails through the frost. The humans clutch spears tipped with sharpened stone, their eyes fixed on the largest of the beasts. The hunt begins. With coordinated cries, the hunters drive the mammoth toward a pit dug days earlier. Arrows fly, spears strike, and after hours of struggle, the giant collapses. Its death is not merely a victory, it is survival itself. From one mammoth, the tribe gains food, shelter, clothing, and tools. Bones become needles, tusks become carvings, and hides become tents. For Ice Age humans, the mammoth was more than prey. It was the heartbeat of life in a frozen world. Archaeological evidence suggests that this reliance came at a cost. At Dolní Věstonice and the Czech Republic, excavations revealed the remains of hundreds of mammoths, their bones scattered around prehistoric camps. Here, humans crafted ornaments and figurines from ivory, and they burned mammoth fat as fuel. Such evidence paints a clear picture. Humans hunted mammoths not just for survival, but for culture and identity. This is the first core explanation of extinction: overhunting. As Homo sapiens spread across Eurasia and the Americas, mammoth populations declined. Some researchers argue that even small groups of hunters could tip the balance because mammoths had slow reproductive rates. A single herd might only produce a few calves each year, and the loss of adult females could devastate entire populations. Imagine plucking threads from a great tapestry. Remove enough, and the whole fabric unravels. But the story doesn't end with hunting alone. The Ice Age itself was ending. Glaciers retreated, temperatures rose, and the Mammoth Steppe, the vast grassland that stretched from Spain to Siberia, began to vanish. Where once grew nutrient-rich grasses now spread forests and marshes. For mammoths, creatures designed for open plains, this was catastrophic. Think of their bodies. Massive size required enormous quantities of vegetation. Some estimates suggest an adult mammoth needed more than 150 kilograms of vegetation each day. As their grasslands shrank, they were forced to wander farther, competing with other animals for dwindling resources. The warming climate also brought new challenges: deeper snow that trapped calves, unstable weather that destroyed grazing grounds, and diseases carried by changing ecosystems. Thus emerges the second explanation: climate change. In truth, it was likely the deadly combination of both. Humans hunted the already weakened herds, while climate shifts stripped away their habitat. One force pushed from the outside, the other from within. The mammoth, once master of the tundra, found itself caught in a vice it could not escape. Yet there's more to this story. Details that make extinction feel less like a single blow and more like a slow unraveling. On Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean, a small population of mammoths survived long after their mainland cousins had disappeared.
Isolated by sea, they endured until about 4,000 years ago. But when scientists examined their DNA, they discovered troubling signs. Genetic mutations that affected reproduction, coat color, even their sense of smell. These mammoths had become a population in decline, plagued by inbreeding and fragile health. Their story is a haunting reminder that extinction is often not a sudden catastrophe, but a drawn-out struggle against inevitability. When we picture mammoths, we often imagine their dramatic end, falling to hunters, collapsing in blizzards, or vanishing as the ice melted. But perhaps the reality was quieter, more tragic. Herds growing smaller year by year, calves not surviving winters, old bulls wandering alone, never to return. The silence of the mammoth steppe creeping across the earth until only humans remain to tell the story. And so the first part of the explanation is clear. The woolly mammoth went extinct through a complex interplay of human hunting and climate change, compounded by the fragile nature of isolated populations. Yet even this answer leaves us with questions. Why did some populations vanish earlier than others? Could mammoths have survived if humans had hunted less, or if the climate had shifted more slowly? In the next section, we will dive deeper into the debates, controversies, and unanswered mysteries, exploring not only science, but also the strange theories that still haunt this Ice Age enigma.
The extinction of the woolly mammoth is often explained with simple narratives. Humans hunted them, or the climate changed too quickly. But reality is rarely simple. When we look closer, the mystery deepens. Scientists remain divided, debates rage in archaeology and paleontology, and new discoveries continually challenge old beliefs. Let's begin with one of the most enduring controversies. Were humans really capable of wiping out such a massive species? Some scholars argue that early human tribes, numbering in the thousands, could not possibly have exterminated millions of mammoths across 2 continents. They point to the resilience of other Ice Age giants, like bison, elk, and reindeer, that survived despite being hunted. Could it be that mammoths were not destroyed by human hands, but by forces of nature far greater than ourselves? On the other side, the evidence of hunting is undeniable. At sites such as Borelic in Siberia, more than 140 mammoth remains were discovered, some bearing clear marks of human butchery. In Clovis culture sites across North America, spear points lie embedded in mammoth bones, frozen in time as proof of deadly encounters. The debate is not whether humans hunted them, it is whether hunting alone could tip the balance toward extinction. And then there is the question of timing. Climate change did not happen overnight. The Earth warmed gradually over centuries. Why then did mammoth populations collapse so suddenly around 10,000 years ago? Some scientists propose that ecosystems reached a tipping point. Once grasslands shrank beyond a certain threshold, herds could no longer sustain themselves. Others suggest ecological traps, patches of land where mammoths once thrived, but which, under new climate patterns, became deadly places lacking food and shelter. But what if there was more? DNA studies open yet another perspective. When researchers sequenced mammoth genomes from remains in Siberia and Wrangel Island, they found evidence of genetic meltdown. Mutations accumulated over generations, weakening immune systems and fertility. In the final populations, scientists discovered bizarre genetic flaws. Mammoths that may have lost their ability to smell flowers, or whose fur color mutated unnaturally. This genetic decline could have made them more vulnerable to disease or less adaptable to changing environments. Speaking of disease, some researchers propose another haunting theory: epidemic. Just as modern elephants are susceptible to certain viruses and bacterial infections, mammoths may have faced outbreaks that spread rapidly through weakened herds. The frozen record cannot yet prove this, but it remains a possibility. Imagine the tundra littered with mauling mammoths, not from spears or hunger, but from an invisible enemy too small to see. And then there are the strangest theories of all: cosmic catastrophe. A small group of scientists believe a comet or asteroid impact around 12,800 years ago triggered massive wildfires, sudden cooling, and widespread extinctions.
Known as the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, this controversial idea links the disappearance of mammoths with sudden climate chaos. In layers of soil across North America, researchers have found microscopic diamonds in iridium, elements associated with cosmic impacts. If true, then mammoths may have been victims not only of humans and climate, but of forces falling from the sky. Skeptics counter that the evidence for an impact is circumstantial, and mainstream science leans toward gradual explanations. Yet the possibility lingers, feeding the imagination. Did a firestorm from the heavens mark the final days of the mammoth steppe? Even stranger are whispers of human memory. Across myths and legends, mammoth-like creatures appear long after science says they were gone. In Siberian folklore, the mammoth was believed to be a giant mole, living underground and dying if exposed to sunlight. Some Native American tribes told stories of massive hairy beasts roaming the frozen north. Could ancient oral traditions preserve fragments of truth that small pockets of mammoths survived longer than we think, perhaps even into the age of early civilizations? This brings us to one of the most haunting facts. While the Sumerians were inventing writing and the Egyptians building pyramids, the last mammoths still walked on Wrangel Island. Think of that overlap. Two worlds, one fading, the other rising. On one shore, human civilization takes root. On the other, the final trumpets of mammoths echo across icy winds. So, which explanation is correct? Overhunting? Climate change? Genetic decline? Disease? Cosmic catastrophe? Or all of them combined? Perhaps extinction is rarely caused by a single force. Instead, it's a cascade. Climate weakens, hunting pressures increase, genetics falter, a new disease emerges. Step by step, the once mighty species falters. The woolly mammoth's extinction may not have been a single event, but a symphony of disasters, each note driving them closer to silence. And what makes this story unsettling is that it doesn't belong only to the past. The mammoth's fate is a warning. It shows how fragile even the most dominant species can be when the world shifts around them. They remind us that survival is never guaranteed, not even for giants. In the next part, we'll leave the cold plains of prehistory and reflect on what the extinction of the woolly mammoth means for us today. What lessons lie hidden in their story, and how might their fate mirror our own future?
The story of the woolly mammoth is not just about an animal that vanished 10,000 years ago. It is, in many ways, about us, about the choices humans make, the fragile balance of ecosystems, and the delicate thread that ties survival to extinction. When we look back at the mammoth's fate, we are not only gazing into the past, we are staring into a mirror that reflects our present and our uncertain future. Think of the Ice Age world. Prehistoric humans lived on the edge of survival, surrounded by powerful creatures and unforgiving landscapes. The mammoth was their lifeline: food, warmth, tools, and even myth. But with each spear thrown and each campfire built, humans participated in a story larger than they could have imagined. Whether intentional or not, our ancestors may have played a role in pushing the mammoth toward oblivion. And this is the first lesson. Our impact is greater than we realize. If small bands of hunters could help tip the balance for a species as mighty as the mammoth, what does that say about the billions of people alive today? About our deforestation, our climate emissions, our relentless consumption? We often believe that Earth is vast enough to absorb our actions, but the mammoth reminds us that even giants fall when ecosystems are disrupted. The second lesson lies in adaptation. Mammoths were marvels of evolution, perfectly built for the cold steppe. Yet when their world changed, they could not change fast enough. Their thick coats became liabilities in warming climates. Their grassland habitats shrank into fragments. Their survival strategy, slow reproduction, high investment in each calf, left them vulnerable to sudden loss. In contrast, humans adapted. We shifted diets, invented new tools, learned to cooperate in larger groups. Flexibility became our greatest weapon,
while specialization became the mammoth's downfall. Is this not a lesson for us as well? As we face climate change today, will we adapt quickly enough, or will we cling to outdated systems until the environment moves on without us? The third lesson comes from isolation. On Wrangel Island, the last mammoths endured for millennia, but their isolation doomed them in another way: genetic decline. Inbreeding reduced diversity, mutations piled up, and their resilience collapsed. The image is haunting. An entire species shrinking to a few hundred individuals, their future eroded by invisible flaws in their very DNA. Now consider humanity. We may not face genetic collapse, but we do face the dangers of cultural isolation, political fragmentation, and the narrowing of perspectives. Just as mammoths needed wide-ranging herds to survive, we need diversity of thought, collaboration, and global unity. Without it, we too risk weakening ourselves against the challenges ahead. And finally, the mammoth leaves us with a fourth lesson: memory. Though extinct, they live on in bones, in cave art, in myths whispered across generations. They remind us that every species carries stories worth remembering. Their absence echoes louder because they once walked beside us. And perhaps that is why the idea of bringing them back through cloning fascinates so many. Scientists today experiment with resurrecting mammoth DNA, blending it with Asian elephants in a bid to restore a piece of the Ice Age. But even if we succeed, will it truly be a mammoth? Or a shadow? A replica? A human creation rather than nature's? This raises a profound question. Should we spend our energy reviving what was lost or protecting what remains? Would the mammoth itself tell us to focus not on resurrection, but on preservation, on safeguarding the elephants, the forests, the oceans before they too fade into myth? In the quiet absence of the mammoth, we are left with responsibility. Their extinction is not just a closed chapter, but a reminder that every species living today walks on the edge of tomorrow. Just as the Ice Age ended, so too might our own era shift, bringing changes we cannot yet predict. And so, as we reflect on the mammoth's fate, we must ask ourselves, will we repeat the same mistakes, or will we learn from them? The answer lies not in the bones buried beneath the tundra, but in the choices we make today. In the next and final section, we will bring together everything we've uncovered, the history, the science, the debates, and the lessons, and leave you with one haunting question. What does the extinction of the mammoth truly tell us about the destiny of humanity?
The mammoth story is, in truth, a story of endings and of beginnings. When the last mammoths fell silent, something else was stirring on the earth. Agriculture was emerging in the Fertile Crescent. Cities were rising along the Nile. Human civilizations were stepping into history. As giants disappeared, humans began to build monuments that would last millennia. The extinction of the woolly mammoth was not just the closing of one chapter, it was the turning of a page in the book of life, one that placed us at the center of the story. We have traced their journey across frozen plains, watched them hunted by prehistoric humans, and seen them struggle as the Ice Age melted away. We have weighed the evidence of overhunting, of shifting climates, of genetic decline, of disease, and even of cosmic catastrophe. And what emerges is not a single neat answer, but a mosaic. Extinction born of many forces colliding at once. The mammoth's fate reminds us of two truths. The first, no species, no matter how mighty, is immune to change. The second, our actions carry consequences far beyond what we can imagine. Prehistoric humans did not know they were shaping extinction. They hunted to live, to feed their families, to endure the long winters. And yet, those choices rippled outward into the disappearance of a species that had roamed the earth for hundreds of thousands of years. Today, we find ourselves in a similar position.
but on a far larger scale. Our choices shape not just one species, but entire ecosystems. We hold the power to preserve and the power to destroy. Perhaps the greatest tragedy of the mammoth is not that they vanished, but that their absence left us lonelier on this planet. Imagine for a moment, if herds of mammoths still roamed Siberia today, if their trumpeting calls echoed across the tundra, would we see ourselves differently, knowing we still shared the earth with giants? Their bones remind us, their cave paintings whisper, their DNA sleeps, frozen in the permafrost, waiting for scientists to awaken it. The mammoth is gone, and yet not gone. They live on in our imagination, in our science, in the lessons we draw from their silence. And so we end with a question, not about the past, but about the future. If the mammoth teaches us anything, it is that survival is fragile, balance is fleeting, and time spares no species. The question is, will we listen? Will humanity learn from the echoes of the Ice Age? Will we act with wisdom? Or will we too become a story told only in bones and ruins? The answer, perhaps, lies in your hands. If you found yourself drawn into this journey through prehistory, if the mystery of the mammoth stirred something in you, then I invite you to join us as we continue uncovering the lost chapters of humanity's story. Like, share, and subscribe, so together we can keep searching, keep questioning, and keep the memory of our ancient world alive. Because the past is never truly gone. It waits, beneath the ice and stone, for us to remember.